Good morning and a huge welcome. My name is Sam and I'm so pleased that you're joining us. If you're watching live, please keep that chat window handy as I have a question for you to contribute a bit later on as we go. Now, would you like to really know what God thinks of you? Would you like to really know what God thinks of you? Maybe you've never thought about that question, but I bet if you had the chance, you would. Whether we know it or not, we spend a large part of our childhood looking to our parents or carers to see what they think of us. We might ask questions like, have we pleased them? Have we disappointed them? Do they notice us? Do they celebrate our successes and comfort us in our failures? We all have a mixed bag of childhood memories. Those early years have a big influence over the way we see ourselves and consequently the way we live. Now, deep down, each of us has a yearning to be known, and I'm sure even the dark bits to be known, and also to know that we are known. That last bit is really important. You see, we think that we're the experts on us. Surely we are. We've felt our emotions, we've overcome challenges, and probably faced a few failures at the same time. But the truth is, I think that we know more about ourselves from what other people have or maybe haven't said. So who are we? How should we spend our time and energies? What's got us to this point in life? And how do we navigate the future with our hopes and dreams? And perhaps some fears and doubts. Well, in this series, we're exploring how God can use things in our life to grow our faith. In the previous session, Joel started off looking at practical teaching, not just head knowledge, but engaging and applying faith in our everyday lives. And growth means from the tiniest seed upwards. And if you're even watching this, then perhaps there are some small shoots of faith. Well, God wants those to grow. He wants each of us to grow in faith and trust in Him. And in this session, we're going to look at two things: hearing and putting into practice. This can also be called private disciplines. Yeah, that's right, discipline. Now, most people have quite a strong reaction to the word discipline. And if you're watching live with us right now, I'd love you just to go and throw one word in the chat that comes to mind when you hear the word discipline. We're going to share those a little bit later on, but don't worry, I won't give away anyone's names. Discipline is something we all need, and yet, however focused we are, we all wrestle with and often feel like we're failing at. So, what is discipline? Well, I thought we'd have a quick look in the dictionary. So, discipline, the noun, an activity that provides mental or physical training. But this series is really about practical applications, so I want you to look at the verb as well. Discipline, verb, to train oneself to do something in a controlled and habitual way. Now, achievements are gained through the routine and regular practice of discipline. We're going to look at a few high achievers. Let's take sportsmen and women. Now, my wife Jenny and I, we both went to Loughborough University, and you may know it, it's very renowned for real high levels of sporting achievers and prowess. Just a quick note, both of us studied engineering, not sports. But on the days when we made it out for those early classes, we would often see athletes out there training, been up early hours, often alone. You see, they had a plan, a training schedule. It wasn't training for the sake of it. There was an end goal in mind. Whether it was making the first sports team or turning professional, or even for some people at Loughborough was competing in the Olympics. And they had to apply discipline to their lives to get where they wanted to be. But we could look at musicians. Learning any instrument takes many hours of regular practice. Sometimes it can be seemingly boring and repetitive practice to get the fundamentals so ingrained that they become second nature. And I can testify to this. I have started learning the piano, and any teacher will tell you that students who make the most progress are those who practice a little every day. Consistency is key. Now, my piano teacher often says to me, beginners practice until they can get it right, but a pro will practice until they can't get it wrong. You know, we think, though, that these top achievers, whether it's sports people, musicians or others, we think that they're so naturally gifted that it's basically easy for them and therefore impossible for us. But that is not the case. They have applied their gifts and practice like you wouldn't believe to become so good that it's almost second nature. They've applied discipline to themselves and their lives to work towards a goal. Now, I found a number of areas in my life where embracing discipline has paid off. Not because I enjoy the discipline itself, but I have discovered the rewards from doing so. Now, you might be listening in and thinking, well, I'm not a super sports person or a budding musician, but I think we'd all agree we need discipline in our life. And so it is with growing our faith. Our faith is rooted in a person. That person is God's Son, Jesus. If we apply zero discipline to this relationship, then we're going to see very little growth. And it's the same with any relationship. I'm sure we've all experienced it. Now, before Jenny and I had children, we used to really freestyle time together. And we had busy social calendars and busy jobs. There was always room for late breakfast together on the weekend, catching a movie at the cinema, or just going for a short walk on the spur of the moment. But the phase of family life we're in now with 3 young children, it feels like there are very few moments, never mind in a week, maybe even in a year, when those opportunities just fall into our lap. So we do our best to make it a priority one night a week to eat together after the children have bathed and gone to bed. Sometimes we'll sit at the table and talk. Sometimes we'll chill on the sofa with a movie. But we have to apply discipline to make sure it happens. We don't book social events or use the time to catch up on some work or chores. Now, sometimes it might be tempting to squeeze something else in, but without it, we'll be so far apart. And being totally honest, sometimes that's happened, and it's just served as a reminder of how important it is to have that discipline to keep connecting. Now, to help us navigate these things, we want to be wise. So let's consider 2 things. What did Jesus say, and what did he do? To learn more, we can investigate the Bible, a series of books collected together which tells the big story of God's love for us. In a book written by one of Jesus' followers named Matthew, we have a record of a talk that Jesus gave. It was called the Sermon on the Mount. And in one story that Matthew records, just at the beginning of it, Jesus says this: "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock." The story goes on. You can read some more in Matthew chapter 7. I just wanted to pick up on 2 things from this. Jesus instructs us first to hear and then put into practice. Life is super fast right now. I mean, just look at the number of platforms that we can feel pressured or even want to just try and keep up with. Maybe it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, emails, text messages. The list just goes on and on. There's new platforms being added all the time. And a lot of people, I'm sure, in private, if you spoke honestly, would confess to checking their phone while on the toilet. Now, this is something we just get used to, the distractions. So, How do we cope with all these things? How do we hear? Well, hearing happens when we listen, and listening happens when we are quiet and still ourselves. So what did Jesus do? Well, another book in the Bible, written by a man called Luke, records this. It says, one day Jesus was praying in a certain place. And when he finished, one of his disciples said to him, Lord, teach us to pray. And in a book written by Mark, it says this, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. If we look at the life of Jesus, we see him instructing us to listen, and then he models it by finding a quiet place to pray. So the way we cultivate our faith is first by hearing. And to hear something, we have to listen. And listening is best done in a quiet place. This brings us to our first practical step of this message. When you withdraw for some quiet space to listen to God, you'll find one thing starts to happen. He will tell you what he thinks of you. You'll hear other things too, I'm sure. But as a father myself, when I get some quiet or alone time with one of my children, the things that I love to do, make the most of that time, is to assure them of who they are, to call out the good things in them, to build them up, to encourage them, and maybe also to address some things that need some work. Now, some of us, if we're honest, don't really want to hear. Maybe we're worried that actually what we'll hear is criticism, because that's what we've heard before. Maybe we're anxious that we won't hear anything, just silence. That feeling of being alone and isolated. Or maybe we're troubled that if we do hear something, we're going to have to take some action. We're going to have to respond. And we'd rather just keep on doing what we're doing. We don't want life to be disrupted. Well, I'm going to make it really simple. You're just going to have to get over those things and face it. God is a good Father, and I know he wants to speak to you. I'm sure he wants to speak to you right through this message as you listen. First and foremost, I believe he wants to tell you how wonderful and amazing you are. But how do we listen? Well, it's a dimension of something called prayer. I'm sure you may have encountered or come across prayer before, wherever you are in this adventure of faith. And often we can see prayer as just a way of asking God for things. Petition, which is asking things for ourselves, or intercession, which is asking things for others, is just one aspect of prayer, but it is not the first. In his excellent book, How to Pray, a simple guide for normal people, Pete Greig makes it really easy by giving us a simple formula for praying. And we looked into some of this last summer when we ran the prayer course. And it's really easy to remember because it makes up the letters of the word pray. And we're just going to look at those now. The P is for pause. The R is for rejoice. The A is for ask. And the Y is for yield or yes. And this is where we get to the bit where we put into practice. So we've heard what Jesus has said. Now we've got to take some action, which is really the crux of this series, applying practical things to our lives. Prayer can happen at any time. They can be long prayers, short prayers. They can be said out loud or quietly in our head. But to grow our faith, we need to commit to a discipline. I'd say probably the most important discipline of each day, to finding a quiet space, a still moment, to put into practice these 4 things that Pete Greig describes. Pause. You need to stop and be still. Put the phone away, stop checking social media, put it on silent. Just get somewhere where there isn't too many distractions. Rejoice. Give thanks. So much of the media influence on our world around us is focused on the things we don't have and the things that are wrong. It's easy to forget to be grateful for all the things that we do have, for the people in our lives. So many things that we can give thanks for. Then we ask, and this is where we can bring those petitions and intercession. And I really encourage you to write down those asks. First of all, it serves as a great reminder, something you can come back to see what you have asked for, and maybe where God has answered some of those requests. But it also allows you to be really honest with yourself. What is it we're actually asking for? Is that something that's going to be good for us? And then the last piece is yield, or yes. And this can be the bit like discipline that we find uncomfortable or difficult to do. But this is where, after we've gone through all these things, we have to surrender to God, because we have to trust that He is a good Father and that He will care and look after us and work things out. So how are we going to get started today? Well, this is real practical application. I hope you don't go away from this message and say, "Oh, that made me feel good," or maybe it did make me feel good. I want you to go away, make a plan, share it with someone, and commit. Have a go this evening or this afternoon. Everyone can find 5 minutes of quiet space in their day. Start off perhaps with the prayer that Jesus taught his followers to say when they asked him, "Lord, teach us to pray." You may have heard of it. It's called the Lord's Prayer. And I'm just going to read it now in a couple of different versions. You can maybe find one that you particularly connect with. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Or in the Message translation, it sounds like this: Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. So maybe close your eyes when you pray that, or open them if you need to see the words. And then think about pausing for a moment. Give God a chance to speak. I bet He will. Then we can move on to rejoicing. What is there in your life to be thankful for? And not just things. What about experiences? What about relationships? What about opportunities? Memories? There's so many things that we can give thanks for. And now you're in a good place to ask. And ask for the right things. And not just for yourself. Ask for others, on behalf of others. Finally, you can come to a place of yielding. And this will get easier as you learn to trust in Him, that He has good things for you. Well, looking at the comments that you shared, your reaction to the word discipline, thanks so much for engaging. Some of the things that were said were you felt maybe you've been told off, correction, failure, military, or the cane. Perhaps some old schooling experiences there, but thanks so much for sharing those things. You know, often it can be a real negative reaction. But I think when you set out daily time to pray, you'll start to realize that although it begins as a discipline, it becomes a habit. And then over time, it becomes something you don't want to ever manage without. it will become a joy, a place of strength to set you up for the day ahead. As I posed the question at the start, you will start to hear what God really thinks of you, speaking to your identity. And that honestly will change your life. Now, there are other private disciplines which will help your faith to grow. I haven't got time to cover them right now. But if you join this adventure of faith with us, which I hope you will, then you'll learn lots more about these sorts of things along the way as we journey together. Prayer is a great place to start. As best as you can right now, let's make a start today. Let's not put it off. Do something to change your posture. You don't need to be a spectator in this. Maybe it would help to stand up or sit down, or just hold out your hands to receive. Maybe look out the window or down at your feet. Put distractions away for a moment as best you can. Discipline, like those words that were given in the chat, might sound like the last thing that you want to do. Maybe it just reminds you that you're bad at sticking at things, or that you'll fail, or that everyone else seems so much better at doing it than you. But when we make time to pray, to listen, and put this into practice, none of this is true. We hear God, our Father, speaking to us, just as any good father talks to each child. He wants to start with telling us how he sees us. You see, where we see brokenness, he sees a chance to build something new. Where we see darkness, he sees light breaking through. Where we see shame, he knows where to start cleaning things up. Where we see shouting, he can whisper calm. Where we see failure, he's not looking for success. He wants us to love us. So what I thought we'd do together now, wherever you are, wherever you're watching from, is that we're going to read that prayer that Jesus taught us. And the words are going to be on the screen as we just join together reading this out loud. I really like the traditional version. I don't know why. I think it just reminds me of being a child. And sometimes it's something to hold on to. Sometimes we just need something to utter when we feel we have no other words that we can say. So let's read this together. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. I hope that you are able to pray those words. If it's the first time you've said them, or maybe the first time you felt like you said them with any meaning, and you want to know more, we'd love to connect with you and join this adventure of faith. And we'll share a few more details at the end of how you can do that. But we're going to join in a song now, and these words talk about our identity, being children of God. I am who you say I am, not who I think I am, or what others have said about me, or my failures or my shame have shaped me, or even the long list of achievements I've put together. I am who you say I am. Let's sing together now.
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. The sun sets free.
Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate you sharing your heart this morning. Personally, I was really challenged by the idea that setting aside time is actually an opportunity for God just to speak to us about what he thinks of us. You know, I grew up thinking that me setting aside time for God was because of something I had to do out of duty or, obligation. I honestly didn't think of it as something that we did out of relationship. And that's really challenging me to think about setting aside time with God because of relationship and not out of obligation. I really appreciate it. That's something I took away this morning. Maybe there's something else that you've taken away that really speaks to you. Share it on the chat if you like. Share it in your small groups this week. You know, communicate with others. Share what it is that God is speaking to you about. I don't know if you saw already this morning, but today at 9:30 when we put out our Superstars, the Superstars, our stuff for our children, looked at exactly the same material this morning. They looked at whatever age you are, you can hear God speak to you, and that God speaks in lots of different ways. They also looked at the same story about the wise and foolish builder and building on the sand or building on the stone. They both heard the same information, but they just applied it differently. If you haven't yet seen it, I'd encourage you, go ahead and watch it. Now, if you've got children or young people in your house, what an opportunity to watch it together with your children and actually speak to them and teach them that God speaks to them as well, no matter what age you are. What an opportunity to watch a fun-filled session for our children where you can help speak into your own children's lives about how God speaks to us today. I'd really encourage you to check it out if you haven't seen it already. Sam also recommended the great book by Pete Greig and also the prayer course. It's a free course. Information is coming up on screen, and you can find out about it yourself. If you haven't yet done it, I'd encourage you to go on there. All of the content there is free, and we highly recommend this resource. It's a really, really great resource. Also, in just a few minutes, we're going to be opening up our digital lounge, if you like. So it's called the foyer, and this is where you can jump in on Zoom and, grab a coffee and then jump in and actually join us on Zoom and see people face to face and talk to people as well. So that's open for 30 minutes, and it happens immediately after we finish this. So in the next few minutes, the Zoom room will be open and you could join us in the foyer, and it'd be great to have you. If you're a first-time visitor, feel free to come. If you've been every week for years, you're welcome as well. So everybody welcome and join in and come on that. And whatever else you've got planned for your day, I pray that you have a great week. And once again, just as we close, just a reminder that we are challenged to put into practice what we've been talked about and learned today. Hey, have an awesome rest of the day. Have an awesome week. And we'll see you next Sunday. Same place, 10:20. Take care. Bye-bye.